As you're turning there, I love to remind us of our vision. We declare this on a consistent basis. I say it like this: Trinity Life Center exists to build Christ followers. Say this last part with me nice and loud: who love, live, and lead as Jesus model. Today I want to begin a new series, and I've titled it Wisdom. Say wisdom. This is a word that I love. This is a word that I use a lot. The reason I use this a lot is because this is a word that I pray in a very simple prayer every single day. And that's without exaggeration. I pray this not just I don't just pray it daily. I pray it several times a day. I start the day with this: Lord, give me wisdom for today. And that prayer over time has grown. And the reason it has grown is because in 2013, I came here. And because I came here, I learned how little wisdom I actually had. And as I began to serve, and as I began to lead, I began to pray differently. Lord, I need wisdom for this legal issue. I need wisdom based upon this financial issue. I need wisdom based upon this crisis. I need wisdom based upon staffing. I didn't know, especially when I came, who do you hire, who do you fire? I remember having a conversation with the pastor, and I said, how do you go through that? And he said this, greatest word, it was wisdom. He said, be quick to fire, slow to hire. And I went, wow, that's wisdom. Now we treat this like the game of Survivor, and we start voting people off the island all the time. But it's not like bad. It's wisdom. Lord, I need wisdom. Sometimes this prayer goes from the daily prayer to a prayer in the moment. Lord, I'm in this conversation, and I don't know what to do. I don't know what to say, so I need wisdom. I'm on this call. I need wisdom for a response. I just received this message, and now I have to respond. There are days where I ask for wisdom, and then there are days where I don't, and the difference is success and failure. I've sent messages, I've responded without wisdom, and then there have been moments where I've responded with. The need for wisdom is part of who I am because of what I need based upon all that God has trusted to my life. I need wisdom to live. I need wisdom to lead and to serve my family. I need wisdom to lead and serve this church. Everyone needs wisdom, not just me. Everyone needs wisdom. Will you look at your neighbor and say, you need wisdom? Some of you said that with attitude. That was personal right there. Over the years, I've learned that there's something different based upon wisdom and intellect. Being smart, intelligent, and intellect is different than wisdom. Intelligence is the ability to learn, to understand, and to apply knowledge skillfully. Wisdom is the tool using knowledge and experience to make good, wise, godly decisions. An intelligent person is not guaranteed wisdom. I researched this week the smartest person in the world. And just in doing that, I shared that with a pastor friend this week, and he said, hey, how about you and I take an IQ test? I don't know if you have those kind of friends in your life. He sent me the link, and what was worse, I also had to pay for the result. So that just made me mad, but thankfully I didn't know that during the test, so I was okay until the very end. I paid the $1, I received my result, and as I received the result, I obviously was a very highly intellectual test. As I received the result, I received a score of 129. Can you just say, I don't know if that's good. My friend said, what was your score? His name is Tony. And Tony said, what was your score? And I said, it was 129. He said, buddy, I got 130. I don't know if that's true or not. He waited for my response before he gave me his number. Later, I told him, Albert Einstein had an IQ of 160. He said, buddy, can you imagine? We are 30 points away from Albert Einstein. To which I said, 31. Now who's smart? Einstein had an IQ roughly of 160. Da Vinci was 180 to 220. Newton was between 190 to 200. Marilyn von Savant, she holds the current Guinness World Record set in 1985, and she has a measured IQ of 228. And by the way, I don't think she and I took the same test. There's another gentleman I learned of. His name is Young Hoon Kim. He, in 2024, established an IQ of 276, but he's not a Guinness World Record holder. It wasn't registered. He just released a video most recently, and in all of his research, this is how he said, in all of my research with an IQ of 276, I've learned Jesus is the answer. I love that. I learned of another man. His name was William James Sidis. He was born in the year 1898, and his IQ would measure, because the tests were not the same as what it would be today, it measured roughly between 250 to 300. He could read a newspaper at 18 months. He typed letters on a typewriter at the age of 3. He mastered algebra and geometry at age 6. I'm 49 and I'm still trying to spell algebra. He taught himself 8 languages. He created his own language at age 8. It was a hybrid of Latin. He began as a student at Harvard at age 11, the youngest to ever be enrolled. He graduated Harvard at age 16. He was a college professor in a different university at the age of 17. Due to his amazing intellect, he was rapidly propelled, but socially and psychologically, he suffered greatly. He slid into what an article wrote as anonymity, and he died at the early age of 46 years old, and sadly, he was labeled as a failed prodigy. Here's what I've learned. Intellect without the stewardship of wisdom can lead us nowhere. I want to be well-read. I want to be smart. I want intellect, but I've learned that intellect is not a guarantee for wisdom. The prayer of wisdom is something that God allows us access to. Proverbs 1 is our series text, and it's in the first 7 verses that we have our foundation. It says, the Proverbs of Solomon, son of David, king of Israel, to know wisdom and instruction, to understand words of insight, to receive instruction in wise dealing, in righteousness or right living, in justice, in equity, that's balance, to give prudence to the simple, knowledge and discretion to the youth. Let the wise hear and increase in learning, and the one who understands obtain guidance. To understand a proverb and a saying, the words of the wise and their riddles. Hear this, verse 7. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. Fools despise wisdom and instruction. There are 31 chapters in the book of Proverbs. My childhood pastor used to say this, a proverb a day will keep foolishness away. If you read one proverb every day, it has the potential of at least establishing a foundation. Why? Proverbs is a guidebook. It's a book we get to take to work. It's a book that we take to the streets. It's a book that we take home. It's wisdom that's available to us from this one book. And the author of the majority of this one book, his name is Solomon. To understand Proverbs, we need to know who Solomon was. Solomon is the king that follows his father, David. He's the third king in the nation of Israel. 1 Kings 3 verse 3 says that he loved the Lord. He followed the same spirit that his father David had established. And as a way to honor Solomon's heart, God says, 1 Kings chapter 3 verse 5, at the very end he says this, ask what I shall give you. Will you say the word ask? What would you choose if God offered you anything that you asked for? Here's the truth. I now know the answer. I don't know that I would have naturally started there. This is where Solomon finds himself. He's a young king. The creator, Yahweh himself, is now giving him this gift. And this is where we see intelligence, intellect, smart become wisdom. 1 Kings 3 verse 9, give your servant therefore an understanding mind to govern your people, that I may discern between good and evil. For who is able to govern this, your great people? He doesn't ask for a long life. He doesn't ask for wealth. He doesn't ask for more land. He doesn't ask for revenge over his enemy. He doesn't ask for the greatest army that's ever been established. Solomon asks for wisdom. Wisdom to lead a nation, wisdom to choose the right people, wisdom to judge wisely between disputes, wisdom to recognize priorities and gain perspective. Verse 10 in 1 Kings 3 says, it pleased the Lord that Solomon had asked this, And God said to him, because you have asked this and have not asked for yourself long life or riches or the life of your enemies, but have asked for yourself understanding to discern what is right. That's wisdom. Behold, I now do according to your word. Behold, I give you a wise and discerning mind, so that none like you has been before you, and none like you shall arise after you. The first search I did this week is the smartest person. The second search was who is the wisest person, and Solomon's name comes up. And it's number one. Typically it has this disclaimer. It says, in the Bible, but beyond Scripture, even psychology today has noted Solomon as a wise leader. It gives us the backdrop for what we get to look and what he authored in Proverbs. Solomon points out several characteristics of men and women. We know this. The first step towards wisdom is the saving faith in Jesus Christ. 2 Timothy 3:15 says, we're wise people are wise unto salvation. Before we gain wisdom about anything else. Why? Because Jesus Christ is the wisdom of God. That's what Colossians 2 and 1 Corinthians 1 says. Educated and trained people who ignore or reject Jesus can still succeed in making a good living, but without him, they can never succeed in a good life that honors him. The wisest thing a person can do is to trust Christ and live in obedience to him. I've titled our message today, Wisdom's Call. Will you say Wisdom's Call? I believe that each of us call out to God for wisdom. What if wisdom calls back? Is there a way we would recognize what God was saying? That's the premise of the book of Proverbs, this book of wisdom. I looked at Proverbs, and the first 9 chapters are actually the introduction to the entire book of 31 chapters. There are 10 speeches that are outlined in these first 9 chapters, and they are connected and outlined as a father giving wisdom to a son. Within those 10 speeches are 4 poems titled and connected to Lady Wisdom, 2 of which we're going to look at in chapter 1 and chapter 9, as they are the bookends of this introduction. This is how Solomon introduces wisdom to us, like a father offering reflection for the child to receive. A picture of wisdom that he's crafted as a female character. She's not here for good advice. This is God's invitation for us to receive wisdom that comes from him. As I've been reading this passage over and over, and as I've been through this book multiple times, I'm praying today that God will begin to speak through wisdom's call. If you're taking notes, I want to give it to you in 2 areas. Number 1, it's wisdom's call to salvation. Wisdom's call for us as followers of Christ begins with salvation. It's here that Solomon begins to reference wisdom as the one who's calling us to salvation. Proverbs 1 verse 20 says, wisdom cries aloud in the street. In the market she raises her voice. At the head of the noisy streets she cries out. At the entrance of the city gates she speaks. Again, this is poetic language, and I will confess and tell you that because of the symbolism, I struggled a lot this week. My first thought, why is wisdom given the title as a female character within this? Why is wisdom portrayed as a lady? And because of that, I do a lot of research. And some of those researches take me on these wild goose chases that lead to nowhere. But as I researched, I found one pastor that broke it down based upon a story he told. And I want to share it with you. He said, one day, a female scientist was conducting experiments on the human brain. She learned of a place that received cadavers for medical research. She approached them about the purchase of a brain for study. The man behind the counter stated that a female brain was $1,000 and the male brain was $2,000. The female scientist was shocked, and she asked the question that all of you are asking like I did as well. What is the difference in pricing between the male brain and the female brain? The man behind the counter answered by saying, the male brain is like new, it's hardly been used. And all the ladies said, and all the men, don't say a word, just ask a lady after and you'll get that. The context here, men have great intellect, understanding of things. Women have a predisposition to wisdom. Wisdom speaks in a loud voice in this moment that all can hear. And the cry that is here is a cry for salvation. Can I just say it very plainly that there is no wisdom that does not come unless we have said yes to Jesus Christ. This is salvation. We experience salvation in creation. Romans 10:18. But I ask, have they not heard? Indeed they have, for their voice has gone out to all the earth, and their words to the end of the world. We experience salvation even inside us through our conscience. Romans 2:15, they show that the work of the law is written on their hearts, while their conscience also bears witness, and their conflicting thoughts accuse or even excuse them. On that day when, according to my gospel, God judges the secrets of men by Christ Jesus. We have a responsibility as his church to proclaim this gospel message so that all can hear and be saved. Just like wisdom standing on a street corner, we are called as followers of Jesus Christ to stand and preach this word in an uncompromising way. Wisdom calls from the crowded streets and public places where busy people are gathering to take care of the businesses of life. Principles of truth are revealed to daily life. They get to be communicated far beyond an academic setting. They have to go into the marketplace. They have to go into the neighborhoods. Wisdom even goes into the city gate where the leaders are conducting business. No matter where people are, they need to hear wisdom's call. Verse 22 of Proverbs 1 says, how long, O simple ones, will you love being simple? How long will scoffers delight in their scoffing? And fools hate knowledge. There are three classes of sinners that are outlined here. It's the simple one, the scoffer, that's mocker in the NIV, and the fool, that's fool in all the translations. The simple are naive people who believe anything and yet examine nothing. They're gullible. They're easily led astray. Can I say that I am that one? The majority of us would be in this category. The scoffer, they know everything and they laugh at the things that are eternal. While the simple one has the blank look on their face, the scoffer comes in with a smirk because they know just enough to be dangerous. Fools are people who are ignorant of truth because they refuse to change even though they know what is reality. Their problem isn't a low IQ or poor education. Their problem is a lack of spiritual desire to seek and find God's wisdom. Fools enjoy their foolishness, but they don't know how foolish they are. The outlook of fools is purely materialistic. It's humanistic. They hate knowledge and they have no interest in things that are eternal. They refuse to obey wisdom's voice. They won't take hold of her outstretched hands. They laugh at her warnings. They mock her words. Proverbs 1:26, I also will laugh at your calamity. I will mock when terror strikes you. Because they have laughed at wisdom, one day it says wisdom will also laugh at them. Because they mocked, one day she can mock. Wisdom sees the storm of judgment that's coming, that will bring distress, that will bring anguish upon those who reject this invitation of salvation. When that judgment arrives, sinners will try and call upon the name of the Lord, but it will be too late. Isaiah 55 verse 6 says, seek the Lord while he may be found. Call upon him while he is near. Those who with wisdom say yes today to salvation. Sinners will reap what they have sown. Proverbs 1 verse 31, therefore they shall eat the fruit of their way. They have their fill of their own devices. For the simple are killed by their turning away, and the complacency of fools destroys them. They turned away their ears from hearing the truth, and they were complacent. They were comfortable with believing lies. Verse 33 ends this chapter, and it says, but whoever listens to me will dwell secure and will be at ease without dread of disaster. Wisdom is promising security. Wisdom is promising peace to those who listen. Those who say yes to Jesus find this stability. The call of wisdom related to us begins with salvation. Without Christ, we fall into these labels of simple, scoffer, fool. If we choose Christ, we begin in wisdom. This is the picture that Solomon is painting for us. Wisdom that's described as a woman that's crying out in the streets for us to accept Jesus. She doesn't hide herself. She shouts publicly. Church, if we're encountering wisdom, we must go searching for wisdom. This is the foundation for the lives that we're called to live as followers of Christ. Why? Salvation establishes our foundation for every decision. Let it honor you, Lord. Salvation is where we build our heritage and establish our values. Salvation is where we learn to avoid those that are ungodly. Salvation is where we pursue wisdom. Salvation is what ushers in the presence of the Lord, the peace of the Holy Spirit, and the direction for our lives. Number one is wisdom's call to salvation. Number two, wisdom's call to life. What we see in Proverbs 1 is the visual of standing on the streets and proclaiming salvation. This is the sign of wisdom. Now we go over to Proverbs chapter 9. Will you just turn just a few pages over? And as you look at Proverbs chapter 9, we begin to see the other side. Now we have the house that becomes the backdrop for a feast where wisdom is a hostess. Chapter 9 verse 1 says, wisdom has built her house. She has honed her 7 pillars. She has slaughtered her beasts. This means she's preparing the food. She's mixed her wine. She has also set her table. She has sent out her young women to call from the highest places in the town. Whoever is simple, let him turn in here. To him who lacks sense, she says, come, eat of my bread and drink of the wine I have mixed. Leave your simple ways and live and walk in the way of insight. This is the setting where the table is set. Now wisdom is sending her maidens out to the highest places to invite others into a feast. It was customary in that era where 2 invitations would be sent. There's a pre-invite that goes out days in advance, notifying guests it's a save the date. The second invitation is the day of the feast. This establishes who is actually coming. We don't have any knowledge of a pre-invite. What we do have is the moment on the day of. This is an invitation to come right now. Something I noticed, they're inviting only one group, the simple, me. Wisdom's call, remember, in verse 22 of chapter 1, was to the simple, the scorner, and the fools. We know if you look at chapter 8, the scorners laughed at her. So this second invitation dismisses that group. The fools don't want God's wisdom, so now she's just going after the simple ones and inviting them to the feast. It's a dangerous place for us to be where we reject God's invitation because we never know if it's the last invitation. This upcoming Friday will be the 105th funeral that I've hosted in 13 years as senior pastor of Trinity. I don't know if you know this, but that's a lot. Something that on the very first funeral I ever hosted here, I did something that has just become our norm. We give an invitation every single time. Why? Some people that are walking through those doors have never walked into church. That may be the one invitation that they need. Proverbs 9 verse 10, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and the knowledge of the Holy One is insight. These are the same words, but in chapter 1, it says the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. Here, we understand knowledge and wisdom being the same. Verse 11, for by me your days will be multiplied and years will be added to your life. If you are wise for yourself. If you scoff, you alone will bear it. When we respond to wisdom's invitation and attend this feast, the question is, what do we receive? One thing, we get greater respect and honor of the Lord, deeper knowledge of the Holy One. That's verse 10. The better we know God, the stronger will be our knowledge and discernment when it comes to our decisions of daily living. Once again, wisdom promises to give us long life. That's verse 11. And to fill our days and years with rich experiences of God's grace. God's desire is to add years to our life and life to our years. And he will do it when we accept wisdom. Verse 13 says, the woman folly is loud. She's seductive. She knows nothing. She sits at the door of her house. She takes a seat on the highest place of the town, calling to those who pass by, who are going straight on their way. Whoever is simple, let him turn in here. And to him who lacks sense, she says, stolen water is sweet, and bread eaten in secret is pleasant, but he does not know that the dead are there, that our guests are in the depths of Sheol. This chapter closes and it's different. If wisdom is seen as the hostess here, now folly is the equivalent of the prostitute who's trying to tempt others, inviting them to her house. If they accept that invitation, they attend a funeral, not the feast. But they don't realize when they walk through the door, it's their funeral. I believe this is the battle that we're in. We know what wisdom says. We know what wisdom is saying to us. God's promise is eternal life. But sin, the temptations we encounter, those are the things that lead us away from wisdom's call. Church, we live in a world of deep darkness. We see it in every cultural turn and at every current event. The reality is we are in a spiritual battle. A war is raging in our world today. Not just any war, one that is darkness and light. Ephesians 6 verse 12 says we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the cosmic powers over this present darkness, against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly places. I'm coming to a place where I'm overwhelmed by the fact that wisdom is standing on one side, and yet we have a temptation of this world on the other. The call is simple for salvation and life, and our job today is to answer wisdom's call. As we close our time today, the question I always ask, what do I do with all this? There's way too much poetry and symbolism here. I don't even know what to do. I believe I can summarize the visuals that are given for us in these 2 chapters by saying, wisdom is calling us today. Salvation and life. The question, are we listening? If we look at the Gospels, the first 4 books that are in the New Testament, they outline the life and the ministry of Jesus. There are many parables that Jesus spoke of. A parable was a story, was an illustration that he used to communicate godly truth, to give wisdom. If we look at Luke 16, Jesus speaks of a rich man and another poor man. His name is Lazarus, but this is not the same Lazarus, his friend, that Jesus would later raise from the dead. Luke 16, verse 19 says, there was a rich man who was clothed in purple and fine linen and who feasted sumptuously every day. And at his gate was laid a poor man named Lazarus, covered with sores, who desired to be fed with what fell from the rich man's table. Moreover, even the dogs came and licked his sores. The poor man died and was carried by the angels to Abraham's side, a visual of heaven. The rich man also died, and he was buried, and in Hades, being in torment, he lifted up his eyes and he saw Abraham far off and Lazarus at his side. And he called out, Father Abraham, have mercy on me and send Lazarus to dip the end of his finger in water and cool my tongue, for I am in anguish in this flame. If I summarize this today, the rich man has died. Despite his wealth, he was buried. He probably had a very elaborate and a very expensive funeral, and yet we see here he is in hell. When this poor man, Lazarus, died, he's carried to Abraham's side, probably without any great funeral. It's an amazing paradox, a difference. Death takes place, Scripture says, when the spirit leaves the body. That's James chapter 2, verse 26. But death is not the end. Death is actually the beginning of a whole new existence in another world. For the Christian, death means to be present with the Lord. 2 Corinthians 5, verses 1 through 8, Philippians 1:21, to be absent from this life, in this body, is to be present with the Lord. For an unbeliever, one who has not said yes to Jesus, one who has not experienced salvation, death means to be away from God's presence, to be separated. That's torment. The new year has begun. There's an urgency that I feel that's different, and it's to preach and proclaim wisdom, salvation, and life before it's too late. This is wisdom's call for us, and the call for us right now, will you listen? Will you choose? Will you be blessed? Proverbs 8, verse 6, hear, for I will speak noble things, and from my lips will come what is right. For my mouth will utter truth. Wickedness is an abomination to my lips. Verse 7 is detest the things that are wicked. Ephesians 5, verse 11, take no part in the unfruitful works of darkness, but instead expose them. Proverbs 8, verse 10, take my instructions instead of silver, and knowledge rather than the choice of gold. For wisdom is better than jewels, and all that you may desire cannot compare with her. God's wisdom today is more costly, more valuable than silver or gold. This week, I learned the price has changed between silver and gold. In 2000, the price of silver was $4.95 an ounce. Today, it is $86.61 per ounce. per ounce. Gold prices in the year 2000 was $279 per ounce. Today, it's $4,905.86 per ounce. This has a double meaning for me because the majority of Anna's jewelry was bought in the late 90s and the early 2000s. And what that means is I can't afford the prices of today. That's what that means. But more than that, as I look at this, even with a growing value, it's teaching us this. Wisdom is more priceless. God's wisdom is more precious than rubies. Nothing compares. Nothing comes close. Proverbs 8:32 closes. And now, O sons, listen to me. Blessed are those who keep my ways. Hear instruction and be wise. Do not neglect it. Blessed is the one who listens to me, watching daily at my gates, waiting beside my doors. For whoever finds me finds life. Will you say the word life? If you find him, you have life. This is wisdom. Whoever finds me finds life and obtains favor from the Lord. Watch daily, wait at the doorway, and you will find life. This is the call of wisdom.